We give you that 2-hour break.
All right, let's move on to item number 4F, the single garbage hauler discussion. Clay.
Yeah, thanks again. So,
No, thank you again.
So I've had this one brought up quite a few times, not only from several of you around the table, from several staff members, but also community members through strategic planning, through the community expo. So this is one that, admittedly on both sides, but it's something that people are very passionate about, and so we felt that it's probably time to at least discuss this. And additionally, with some of the investments that we're talking about upcoming for streets, it seems like an appropriate time to talk about something that may help protect those assets. So with that said, what we're talking about tonight is the difference between what's called an open collection system of garbage, which is what we currently have, where any provider can come in, pending that they get a license from Gina's office, and provide garbage service to our residents, versus what's called a organized collection of garbage service, which is where we take a much more thorough look at who comes in and provides garbage, and there are a lot more regulations and rules on who can provide garbage, and we actually take an active role in limiting the number of garbage providers that are in a community. So I want to talk a little bit about what each one is, and then specifically what the benefits and what the downsides are of those, and then we'll talk about options of what we can do to move forward. So I mentioned kind of what open collection is, and this is about 65 to 80% of cities use this, and about for their solid waste, so garbage, and about 40 to 60% of cities in Minnesota use this for recycling. So there's about 50-50 for recycling and about 2/3 to 3/4 using it for solid waste. So the benefits of this system are that residents have open choice, and you'll find that cities that have had this conversation, that's a very important thing to a lot of people, that people want to have a choice of who they have haul their waste. There's a direct relationship between the solid waste collector and its customers rather than the city serving as a liaison. There's minimal administrative costs for the city, and then there's smaller solid waste collectors are better able to enter into the market. So that's something where the cities that go to one collector, obviously the smaller providers are not oftentimes able to provide to a town of 11,000 people, and so that's a consideration to make. The drawbacks of this are that open collection results oftentimes in a more expensive average monthly cost for residents. And I included some attachments in here, but you saw that, for instance, Republic, which provides for the entire city of Monticello, if you look at what their residents paying on average for Republic services in Monticello versus what they're charging in Big Lake, it's significantly less in Monticello than it is in Big Lake. And I'll talk about why in a few minutes.
Because they give them a deal and then charge us more to offset their costs.
Another one of the drawbacks is that there's more truck traffic with multiple collectors, which means that there's more wear and tear on our streets. And there may be inconsistent charges for the same level of service within the city. So I might negotiate a really good deal because I'm a really good negotiator, but Lane, might not be as good of a negotiator, and he doesn't get as good of a deal. So there's some of that going on where some people are paying high levels and some people are paying lower levels. And then the city has a reduced ability to manage any solid waste collection. So that's open waste collection in a nutshell. Let's jump into organized collection. So organized collection can take on a number of iterations. Monticello, for instance, has one hauler that hauls for the entire city, whereas Elk River has divided it into 2 districts, where I believe it's Randy's and Waste Management, and each of them takes half the city. There are some that have more providers, and so you can do it in a number of different ways. There's a lot of ways to slice that one up. But as I mentioned, kind of taking the reverse of the stats before, about 20 to 35% of communities use this for solid waste. 50 to 60% of it roughly use it for recycling. So the benefits of this are that the price paid, and this is based off of a study that was done by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, the prices paid on average by householders is less in an organized collection system than it is in an open collection system. Now, I should note that I said on average, so there are going to be some people who may go up, and but there will be more people who go down on average in the average community. As I mentioned kind of before, that limiting the number of solid waste collectors reduces the truck traffic through the community, and the city has the ability then to manage that solid waste. Standardized service makes public education easier, and what this means is that the benefits of recycling, the benefits of not throwing certain things into the garbage, if you only have one provider, it makes it easier to be consistent about that messaging than if you have, 5 of them. And then the city's ability to seek RFPs helps lower costs. And so, there's a number of reasons why the costs are lower for the end user. When you think about having 1 or maybe 2 users, it's pretty easy to think that if you're, driving your garbage truck down a neighborhood and you've got 20% of the homes that might subscribe to your service, you're still driving the same distance, you're still putting the same wear and tear on the vehicle, and yet you're only getting 20% of the garbage cans on that route. Whereas if you're driving and you're hitting every single one, just the pure cost of gas and the pure cost of driving mileage is reduced. On top of that, if you have a contract where you've got 2,500 homes, you're going to be able to reduce your cost because the economies of scale of doing that on a large scale allow you to buy down the cost of you providing that service. So, you think about any service that you get cell phones, you buy computers, you buy IT service. It's just a lot easier for that provider to provide that to 100 people within the same organization than it is for them to do 1 over here, 1 over there, 1 over there, because they've got to manage the contract for each of those people. They've got to administer that contract for each of those people. So there's just all sorts of costs that the economy scales are brought down, that's kind of the reason why oftentimes it's less expensive. So the drawbacks of the organized collection, again, the households don't get to choose their collector. The city would have some administrative cost. Obviously, we have to negotiate the contract. We would have to route the complaints and all those kinds of things. So there are some administrative costs that are a little bit higher. And then, as I mentioned before, the small collectors have a higher entry cost, and it's harder for them to be competitive. And then the statutory requirements for switching to organized collection are time-consuming and can be politically difficult, as we've seen. There have been a lot of communities where this gets to be a heated issue. So that's kind of the synopsis of what these are and kind of the benefits and the drawbacks. So now the options for how we move forward. The first one, obviously, we can remain with open collection. So really there'd be no change from what we're doing today. We could say, no, we don't want to do anything, and we could stay exactly where we are. The second option to move forward would be to probe the interest of the community. So staff could take a look at, doing a survey, whether this is online, whether this is through the phone, doing open houses or those kinds of things to try to gauge the input of the community and see what does our community want, similar to things like what we've done with, Lake Mitchell or other issues that we've had. So we could take that approach, try to figure out what the community wants before we decide one way or another on what we choose to do. And then the third one would be to outright just decide to jump into the process of doing organized collection. So that would, there's a statutory process that I think I laid out in here. I won't go over that, but the council could elect to go that way. So then I took a look at what are others doing. As I mentioned, both Elk River and Monticello are doing organized collection. Becker currently doesn't contract with anybody, and they've got a process similar to us. And then statewide, I mentioned those statistics, so I won't go over those again. So I guess I won't go into too much to the process of what it looks like to make a change unless you guys want me to. But I guess at this point, we're just kind of looking for conversation about what the council desires and what you would like to see staff do with this process.
How would you, extra steps on how would that be built back out, or would that be something you would just absorb, or how would that be figured into that?
It came on my mother's water bill in Monticello. And she's just got one utility bill. So she got water, sewer, and garbage.
So you mean the staff time that we take to negotiate those agreements and so on?
To negotiate them and to do whatever you do. I mean, obviously, if you tag it onto a bill, that costs something has to happen there. So.
I don't believe those costs are passed on to the consumer, but I can certainly check on that.
Well, I would just, and to me, it's not that big a deal because I'm assuming that just in what we're going to cost savings on roads alone is going to way overweigh what we're going to cost to do it. So.
Did you also say, Clay, that you worked in a community where the community negotiated the agreement, and then the provider was in charge of the billing.
Correct. Where I came from, where I was the city administrator before in Winstead, the provider handled all the billing, they handled all the calls. So really the city's only responsibility outside of negotiating the contract was if we got a call, we would just route it to Waste Management, who was the provider there. So administratively, there wasn't really a lot of time that was added.
Now, is that something that's negotiated yearly, bi-yearly? How often do you look at that contract?
I think that I know the one we had there was 5 years, and I believe that a lot of them are 5-year agreements. I think Elk River and Monticello, I don't know if I noted that in there, but
Yeah, I think when we had recycling, organized recycling, it was like every 2 years, and it was too short of a time.
Elk Rivers is a 10-year. I don't think I put in what Monticello's is, but really that's up to the community to choose what they would like it to be. I mean, it can be several years, it can be 5 years, it can be 10 years.
Well, personally, I think it's something we should take a look at, and I think we should probably, say it's the police department's idea.
Well, did I not mention that in here? I thought they made that clear.
That was down at the bottom in the real small print.
Actually, there is an aspect of this that is a safety concern that goes with the police department, and that's the side streets like where you live, where we're backing trucks
Right,
up there
right.
every day instead of just
3
once a
times.
week.
Right.
3
And
times.
I do have a concern somebody's gonna get backed over like that.
Well, yeah, because they come in, they drive down, they back out, and then they turn around and back down, and they drive back out again. So it's 4 trips a day
Right.
going down the same road. So.
You just
Not
take,
that that's going to change, but it won't be one haul.
Exactly.
you take Powell Street, and I live 3 blocks from here. On Mondays, when it's the brown containers like I have, 85% of the street is brown.
Yep.
On Tuesdays, it's the blue containers, and there's 3.
But
And
yet
that
the
truck,
still
truck
comes
picks up way
full.
down by the church, and then comes flying by the house, go get the second one, and the third one's up on the corner. And then on Wednesday, there's 2, green. It makes
Thursdays is the black ones.
Yes, it makes absolutely no sense to me.
Makes it very inconsistent for plowing too, because you have to work around the garbage
The garbage
every
cans.
single.
Yeah.
I think it's something that,
I think we should look at it.
and I understand that, I don't know why, because when I flush my toilet, I don't get to pick and choose who the provider is. But you're right, and I know people get all bent out of shape out of this because they think it's gonna be a bad thing, but
It's a good thing.
And I think it's an educational thing too. So if we did open houses, we solicited and actively sought input from the city, carefully, of course, but, that gives us the opportunity to educate them. Why are we doing this? Instead of just arbitrarily going out and,
Nobody can match that on their own.
no, I
Can't match those
no.
kind of prices on their own.
So I think it's a great idea. And it's another one, as the mayor would say, it's long overdue.
And there's power in the ability to negotiate a whole city.
That's right, because just like you said, there's economies of scale and efficiencies that kick in by having a single provider. Or if we want to split the city up into 2, which I would prefer not. It's not my call.
So am I hearing pretty much everybody's
I'm
okay with
okay
exploring it?
I'm okay with polling residents or whatever, but I don't like it. That's me. So.
Because you just want to pick your own thing.
Yeah, I do, and I don't like the idea that we keep little guys out who are trying to start a business or whatever. It's my personal beliefs. So I'm more than willing. When I ran, I said I listen to the citizens of the community. So if that's what they want, that's fine. I personally don't like it, but that's what they want. I go for it.
I think we should explore it though, and just hear, and listen.
And like I say, I have my own personal opinion on this one. I will certainly put that aside to whatever the prevailing wind is.
Agreeable?
I disagree with you wholeheartedly.
I disagree.
I was
with you,
going
and
to,
that's fine.
to start my own garbage collection system now. I think I will. And all I'm going to have is the
And you're not
hands
going to be
now.
able to do it at $7 per customer.
All right, guys, we've got 5 minutes. Do we have anything under other, or want to hold off and adjourn? You got anything important, Mike?
Do we have anything?
Well, the only thing I have